Some men walk into a room and don't have to say a word. They're not young, they're not loud, they're not trying to impress anyone. Yet every eye turns their way. They're no longer in their 20s, but they make 20-something women take notice. What creates that kind of pull? It's not money, it's not looks, it's presence. If you think you're too old to be attractive, you're dead wrong. What makes a man irreplaceable doesn't come from his age, it comes from the way he moves through the world. This video will reveal 8 unmistakable signs that you're that kind of man, or well on your way to becoming him. If you recognize yourself in these traits, or realize where you need to level up, drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't stay silent. We're men, but we're not mute. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and like if you're new here. It helps me keep bringing you more valuable content. If you're still chasing women, you don't understand your value as a man. The first lie you need to kill in your head: impressing women is not a mission. It's a byproduct, a result of living with purpose and power. On the flip side, if you're still wasting energy trying to think of the right line, the right outfit, the right time to buy flowers, you've already lost the game the moment you sat down at the table. An attractive man doesn't seek attention. He makes others want to be near him. Women aren't drawn to your words, they're drawn to your presence. That grounded energy, that quiet confidence, that calm strength that only comes from men who've lived, failed, and walked through fire. Young women aren't looking for a funny guy. They've got TikTok for that. They don't need another clown in their life. What they lack, what they crave, is a man they can trust in silence. A man who doesn't scream, "Let me prove I'm worthy," because his very presence already makes them feel safe. And the worst part? More and more older men are turning themselves into jokes by trying to act like kids. They dress like they're 23. They mimic Gen Z slang. They chase trends just to blend in. And they don't realize they're throwing away the most valuable thing they have: depth, maturity, and the magnetic pull of real-life experience. They trade their backbone for attention, and that price is always paid in disrespect. So how do you stop chasing and start attracting? First, understand this. Value doesn't come from what you say, it comes from how you live. A man with a life that matters, a man who wakes up with purpose and walks with direction, doesn't beg to be loved. He just lives right, and women find themselves asking, "Who is he? Why do I want to know more?" Stop flirting, start building. Build a stronger body, a sharper mind, a discipline that doesn't flinch. Make every minute of your day carry weight. Create a life you respect, and then watch who wants to be part of it. Don't sell yourself cheap by trying to make someone like you. Live in a way that if they walk away, they're the ones who lose. And if you're not there yet, don't worry. Start today, with the first step, with shutting your mouth and letting your life speak for you. Women aren't obsessed with promises. They're obsessed with feelings. And the feeling of safety is something weak men can never provide. An older, seasoned man doesn't keep a woman through mind games, pampering, or lines borrowed from Hollywood scripts. He doesn't need to do anything. His very presence is what makes her not want to leave. Not because he begs her to stay, but because she knows that if she walks away, she won't easily find this feeling again. The feeling of standing next to a real man. That's where most men collapse. They build relationships on dependency. They do everything they can to keep her around, as if the world will fall apart if she leaves. What they don't realize is that this only makes them look desperate. The more you show her that you can't live without her, the more you make her want to live without you. Here's the brutal truth. Anyone can leave you at any time. The only reason they don't is because they know you won't fall apart if they do. And that kind of not falling apart, that's what makes you dangerous. Because you're not someone who needs anyone to survive, but you're strong enough to make others want to stay. An attractive man is the kind of man who can say, "You're free to walk away, and I'll still be me." Not as a challenge, just as a fact. A man who knows his value doesn't depend on who stays. It comes from how he lives, with or without anyone by his side. If you're still afraid of her leaving, you haven't become the kind of man she wants to stay with. And there's no shame in that, as long as you've got the balls to face it to fix it. Stop asking how to make her stay. Start asking how to become the man no one else could possibly replace, no matter how far she searches. Start with building your internal anchor. Mental steel. No overreactions. No begging. No trying to manipulate someone's feelings. If they leave, you don't crumble. If they stay, you don't depend. That's the posture of a grown-ass man. The truth is this: no one walks away from a man who knows who he is, knows what he wants, and doesn't negotiate with mediocrity. She might go, but her mind won't forget you. And that's not game, that's power. You can build it, but you can't fake it. Not everyone has the patience to watch until the end. But those who do are always the ones who go further than the rest. If you're one of them, subscribe and like. We're on the same team. Nothing makes a man more trustworthy or more magnetic than the ability to command his emotions. In their 20s, women can still be drawn to flash, but past 28, 35, or 40, they start looking for something deeper. A man who stays standing when the world around him starts to fall apart. Women won't always say it, but they test you. Not deliberately, instinctively. A sarcastic jab, a cold shrug, a random mood swing. It's not to hurt you, it's to see if you'll crack or stay calm. They're not looking for a perfect man. They're looking for one who doesn't flinch under pressure. A man they can look at in chaos and know he's not going anywhere. The problem is most men fail that test. They overreact. They get defensive, emotional, angry, or they shut down completely. They let emotion take the wheel. And the second they do, they lose their edge. Not because they're wrong, but because they're weak. A man who can't master his own reaction, no matter how rich or smart, still looks like a boy in her eyes. An attractive man doesn't react like someone offended. He doesn't puff up to prove a point. He stays quiet when it's smart. He speaks when it's needed. And he constantly checks himself with one question: will this move get me closer to the man I want to be? If not, he redirects. That's emotional navigation, not by denying emotion, but by refusing to be ruled by it. What makes a man powerful isn't the absence of emotion. It's how he stares it in the face and doesn't fold. In a world where everyone reacts on instinct, the man who stays in control becomes rare. And rarity is magnetic. Women don't need you to always be right. They need you to be strong enough not to spiral when they lose their center. If you want to be truly attractive, don't start with words. Don't even start with your body. Start by building your inner stability. Every time emotion rises, pause and ask, do I really need to react right now? Or am I just trying to escape my own insecurity? Every moment you choose calm over chaos, you're reinforcing your masculine power. An older man isn't attractive because of his age. He's attractive because he's lived long enough to know. Emotions are waves, and he's the ocean. He doesn't fight the waves, and he doesn't drown in them. He just keeps his hand on the wheel. And because of that, everyone around him knows they're safe, even in the middle of the storm. Attractive men don't need to count cash on the table to prove their status. They don't need a sports car, a diamond-encrusted watch, or $1,000 bottle of whiskey to be respected, because they've learned something most younger men haven't yet figured out. Money doesn't make you magnetic. How you use it does. Or more precisely, how you control it is what commands respect. The older attractive man doesn't use money to flex. He uses it as a tool to choose, to influence, to protect his freedom. He doesn't need to say, I've got money, because the way he makes decisions, the way he's immune to marketing gimmicks, the way he never needs to prove himself with flashy status symbols, that is the proof. Women aren't stupid. Sure, they might be drawn to shiny objects when they're young, but they quickly learn the difference between a man using money to cover insecurity and a man whose financial independence is part of his core identity. Only the second kind is truly attractive. When you can walk into a restaurant without checking the prices, not because you're trying to show off, but because you're simply not burdened by fear, that's not dinner. That's a message. I run my life. Weak men use money to impress. Strong men use self-control to command respect, and it's easy to tell the difference in conversation. One talks about what he owns, the other talks about what he's built. One is showing off, the other is shaping legacy. One needs attention, the other just needs to be understood. It's not about how much money you have, it's about whether you're in charge of it. Do you use it to buy attention or to secure your freedom? Do you invest in things that help you grow or spend like a man out of control trying to prove he matters? Your answers to those questions define what kind of man you are, not just in her eyes, but in your own. You don't need a mansion, a supercar, or a Rolex to be attractive. What you need is a financial life you control completely. No crushing debt, no stress over petty spending. You've got a plan, you've got discipline, you've got standards. When you say no to cheap distractions, even if you can afford them, you show you're not ruled by impulse. And that's sexier than any car you could ever drive. An older, attractive man doesn't shout, "I've got money." He lives a life that can't be bought, and it's because he can't be bought that people finally understand what he's worth. Here's a truth most men don't want to accept. If you're trying to make a woman laugh to keep her around, you're operating from a place of weakness. Humor might make her enjoy your company, but it's knowledge and depth that make her not want to leave. Lasting attraction doesn't come from making her have fun. It comes from making her grow, evolve, and feel like she's inching closer to a better version of herself just by being around you. The older, attractive man isn't cracking jokes all day. He's not trying to be the life of every conversation. He doesn't chase attention because he's lived long enough to understand something most don't. The ones who always need to make people laugh are usually terrified of being forgotten. He's not. He knows that in a world flooded with noise, the thing that cuts through is truth. Real insight, earned perspective, wisdom that only comes from time in the trenches. Women don't need another entertainer. They've got social media, podcasts, Netflix. What they don't often find is a man who, when he speaks, makes them sit up straighter. A man who challenges them. A man who captivates not with loudness, but with clarity. A man who doesn't try to impress and ends up doing exactly that. When you can share an idea that stays in her mind for a week, you've just done something that 100 funny guys never could. Don't get it twisted. You can still be funny, but it has to come at the right time, in the right dose, and it has to come from intelligence, not insecurity. Subtle humor is the side effect of a man who sees the world with perspective. Forced humor is just a laugh track from a guy begging for attention. So instead of asking, "How do I make her enjoy talking to me?" ask, "Am I becoming the kind of man she can actually learn something from?" A man with depth doesn't need to lecture. He just needs to live with substance, speak from real experience, and stay curious. That alone becomes a lesson. If you want her to stay, don't just make her laugh. Make her think. Be the man who, after every conversation, leaves her with a new insight, a different lens, a deeper hunger for life. When you can do that, you stop being just another guy to pass the time with. You become the man she doesn't want to lose, because no Instagram reel or podcast clip can replace you. Attraction isn't about talking more. It's about saying things that make people stop and listen. Not because you're loud, but because you're real. And in a world full of fake real is the rarest thing of all. There's a certain type of man who invites pity the second he walks into a room. The older guy trying to act young. He dyes his hair, dresses like a bargain bin rapper, speaks in internet slang, and forces his way into conversations meant for a different generation. All of it to cover up one thing. He's afraid of aging. He's terrified of being left behind. So he sells out his dignity in a desperate plea for a seat at the cool kids' table. The attractive older man is the opposite. He doesn't run from his age, he owns it. He is living proof that maturity doesn't kill attraction, it makes it undeniable. He makes younger people look up, take notice, and ask themselves, how do I live like that when I'm his age? That question isn't asked of the man panicking over his first wrinkle. It's reserved for the man who's lived with depth, with purpose, and who never apologizes for being seasoned. That man doesn't chase relevance. He becomes the era others want to step into. It's ironic, young men want to be seen as older, and older men are busy trying to act young. That loop creates a generation of men who don't know where they stand. But the attractive man doesn't play that game. He plants his feet. He doesn't envy youth, because he holds what youth hasn't earned yet: composure, clarity, and a deep-rooted understanding of himself and the world. You don't need six-pack abs to be respected. You need a straight spine, a steady gaze, and a voice that doesn't shake in front of anyone. You don't need to know the hottest tracks or follow every TikTok trend. You need to know who you are, what you stand for, and live in a way that no one can make you question it. Don't pretend you haven't aged. Live in a way that makes others hope they age like you. Let every step, every scar, every line on your face tell a story. Not of exhaustion, but of victory. Of a man who didn't quit, didn't panic, didn't fold, and who now lives as a version of himself that youth can't touch. The attractive older man isn't the one clinging to youth. He's the one youth admires. And that kind of admiration can't be bought, borrowed, or faked. It only comes when you live real, live deep, and never apologize for growing older. One of the biggest mistakes older men make is thinking their life experience gives them the right to lecture. They talk too much, give too much advice, tell too many stories. They think they're passing down wisdom, but what they're really doing is pushing people away. Because no one wants to be taught by a man who doesn't live what he says. An attractive man doesn't preach morals. He lives a life that makes people want to learn. Not with slogans or recycled philosophy, but through his choices, his actions, and his presence. The consistency between his words and his life creates a quiet power, the kind people feel, even when he says nothing. Women, especially younger ones, aren't looking for a teacher. They're looking for an example. They don't need a man to tell them how to live. They need a man who lives in a way that earns their trust. In a world full of self-proclaimed experts who act like clowns, a man who's real and rooted becomes a rare force. That's why so many men think they're making an impression when they're really just turning people off. You talk about integrity, but your life is full of leaks. You talk about strength, but you lose your temper over nonsense. You talk about discipline, but your body betrays you every time you walk up a flight of stairs. No one trusts a lesson from a man who isn't living proof of what he teaches. The man who lives like a practical philosopher doesn't need to write a book. His life is the book everyone wants to read. He doesn't argue right or wrong. He makes people stop and wonder, how does he live like that? And in that silence, he teaches more than any motivational speaker ever could. If you want to be truly magnetic, talk less and do more. Give weight to your words by living a life where every sentence comes from experience, not social media. Let people see that you don't just understand life. You've walked through it, endured it, and stood tall in storms they haven't even faced yet. The attractive older man doesn't preach. He transforms others through how he moves in the world. Calm, fierce, unapologetically real, and impossible to ignore. Most men live in a subconscious state of insecurity. They walk into a room and immediately feel like they need to prove something. Say something tough. Do something manly. Show they have status, power, charisma. But the moment you feel the need to prove it, you've already shown that you don't have it. The real man doesn't prove anything. He doesn't puff his chest. He doesn't argue to be right. He doesn't act dangerous. He knows exactly who he is, and because of that, he's the only one in the room who doesn't need validation. His silence carries more weight than 100 loud voices. His calm movements make people pay attention without ever raising a threat. Women feel that instantly. In a group of men, there's always one who isn't trying to impress, and he's the one they notice. Not because he tries to stand out, but because his presence is undeniable. He doesn't play the game. He doesn't compete in pointless comparisons. He's just there, and there in a way no one can ignore. You know who loses? The guy who constantly needs others to confirm that he's strong, attractive, or enough. Those men live in reaction. They reshape themselves to match the gaze of others and lose their core in the process. The man who doesn't need to prove anything is the one who's passed the hardest test of all, the test of his own inner self. To become that kind of man, you have to train a completely different way of living. No more performing the role. You live real, direct, grounded, aligned between who you are inside and how you move outside. You stop chasing approval. Instead, you become the kind of man you yourself respect when you look in the mirror each morning. When you no longer need anyone to praise you, that's when you become powerful. And when you are powerful, no one needs to tell you you're a man. They just know. The attractive older man isn't powerful because he's aged, but because he's stopped acting. He doesn't pretend. He doesn't compromise. He doesn't ask permission to exist. He stands fully, freely, and the world adjusts to him. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.